Yo, how we doing? This is Mr. Anderson, True Crypto 28 on Twitter. I'm gonna be doing a video today that's actually gonna be focusing on one of my tools, which is called Full Vibration, which actually isn't even up right now. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I did want to provide a couple videos, so I'll probably pop out at least 2 videos just on Full Vibration itself because I don't want them to be too long. And the idea is just I want people to begin the process of understanding edge. I want them to understand what edge is. I want them to understand how to find it. I want to understand how to do some analysis to look for it. But the way I'm going to do that first is to kind of show you that it's true and that it exists. So let me just kind of go over a few different things for you. Before I get started, let me tell you the video itself is brought to you by Prime XBT. I do work with them, and they really are providing some excellent benefits that I tend to like. I mean, I don't work with any of these exchanges unless they're providing some type of significant benefit. And one of the biggest things they provide is that they do allow customers up to a half of a Bitcoin in trading account bonus. So at the moment, you're talking about the potential of over $28,000 extra in your trading account, which has significant benefits for different people. So you can check them out. I'll put a link in there for them as well, so you can feel free to check them out and try them out. No pressure as always, but anyway, just want to go ahead and keep filling in on the sponsor element. So here we go here. I just want to go over a few different things just to kind of, I won't preach too much on this, but my particular tool is called True Vibration. I do provide everyone with a no-cost option to get into True Vibration, but why the name? Why True Vibration? Well, first of all, for anyone that doesn't know me, I've been trading a little over 20 years, and I wanted to try to formulate a tool, indicator, or series of indicators, a series of algos that basically will help me to do my job a little bit easier, but ultimately to find something that's going to replicate my style. In turn, help other people, obviously, to utilize it as well and to try to find their own edge. Because the reality is, no matter what I show you or what signals I give you, I'm not on your shoulder. So it's going to be something that's for you. Now, the guys that are good traders, I can assure you that there's techniques in there and tools and things of that nature that are going to make any trader a better trader. Like, for instance, directional bias indicator. There's specific videos on that. Utilizing that along with anything that you already do will absolutely improve your hit rate. I have no doubt about that at all. Feel free to take the Pepsi challenge on that one. But getting into this element of why did I come up with this True Vibration? What's the purpose? The law of vibration, right? What is the law of vibration? It states that anything that exists in our universe, whether seen or unseen, broken down into and analyzed in its purest and most basic form, consists of pure energy or light, which resonates and exists as a vibratory frequency or pattern. Now, you may not believe that, right? Some people might hear that, go, that's not reality, but it really is something that is factual, right? And really quickly, before I kind of jump too much into law of vibration, which I won't go too deep into it, but ultimately the idea is you have to understand that this is a specific law, and it's a specific law that relates to physics, and it's an immutable law. So there's nothing that can be added to it or changed in any way. It's known for a fact that everything around us consists of different vibrations. All matter. Doesn't matter what it is. It's my desk, right? Look at my desk. Our thoughts, our feelings, they all have vibrational frequencies. It's an absolute reality. Everything around us constantly vibrates on its own frequency. So with that in mind, you have to understand that I said my desk. What do you mean your desk? Well, I mean, it has millions of subatomic particles moving around. Maybe you don't see them. Well, obviously you don't see them, but because we don't, doesn't mean that they don't exist, and they do, and they are moving, right? So that's something that is just one of the magical, beautiful combinations of the world. So for us to kind of think like trading doesn't have that, it's just not reality. And in fact, most people might understand when you see the ebbs and flows of any trade, like for instance, this is a daily chart, so be it, that's fine, but you'll see some trends in here that seem more obvious and you might think there's not patterns involved there. But when you go down to the low time frame, it's pretty obvious, right, that you see flows in one direction to the other. And there's some elements of patterns. People trade patterns for a living. There are various types of pattern traders. I'm not particularly one. I studied patterns for a lot of years. Ended up not being specifically my thing, though every once in a while I'll find a harmonic pattern that I tend to like or something along those lines. But I move much more to this idea of finding the vibration that makes sense. Now, Forget my term. That's just a cute name. It doesn't matter. You don't have to know a lot about physics or vibration or anything along those lines because it's simplified. But I did want to give an explanation of where I come from so that it might make sense to someone to understand. But the real key that I would say is that the key to all this for me is to help people find a trading edge, right? What's an edge? Edge is just basically a technique that allows us to enter a trade with a higher hit rate, right? Or with an edge towards winning, right? Because the simple reality is that most people won't tell you is that nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen. How could they? It's not written. It's not written that there's going to be 761,000 buys on the S&P and 547,000 sales, right? It's not written that Elon Musk decides like, hey, you know what? I'm cashing out of 7 billion today and pushes a fat finger button on whatever asset he likes to sell. You know what I mean? So these elements are not written. But what we can see is what has happened, right? And from what has happened, if we can understand it, then we can take an educated guess on what might happen next. And then from there, it's just creating invalidations from that to identify the point of where are we wrong. And if you could start off by saying, I know that I don't know, right? Because you wouldn't put your life on any trade, correct? If you would put your life on it, then maybe you'd know. But I don't think you're going to put your life on any trade at all because the reality is you don't know. None of us know. I'm wrong every single day in trading. And that's my superpower. My superpower is admitting that I don't know. And if you start from there, now you can create actual edge. So what do I mean by this edge? Well, let's just kind of jump into it. So this is the indicator true vibration, right? There's a lot of different elements going on here. I can't even begin to tell you, and there's enough videos to go into that. So I'm not even going to talk about all of the different options there are involved, including the directional bias indicator, which I have off at the moment. Let me get a sip of water, and then I'll jump further into this. All right, you might expect a lot of water breaks as I'm dealing with the head cold that I'm battling through, so I apologize for that. By the way, if you could like the content, share it, that would be helpful as well. But ultimately, what I'm going to do here, right now I have a smooth vibration and FSR on. These are two different types, and I might as well just keep them on before I turn on full vibration, which is kind of the key, the subject here of what I'm looking at. But I just want to show you a few different things, right? So let's just kind of go back and look at this run that we've seen, right? Bitcoin. And ultimately, all of this works on this vibration element. So I just want to show you this just so that you can have a concept or an idea. I don't have to go too far back and show them all. I'll just show you from here. What do we see here? This is a signal, right? This is called a pivot long signal, and it's coming from this yellow line, which is smooth vibration. The reality is that purple line here, which is called FSR, actually would give you more accurate information, but for the algo's purposes, it's a little bit easier for me to utilize this smoother one. And it's a pretty simple formula that I'm utilizing. But ultimately, what it's allowing me to do is to guess the vibration, right? And guess is the right word, and that's okay. So here's your long, and here's your long. These are all qualified longs, as you can see. Here's your long. Here's your long. I mixed one right there, by the way. There's your long. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 4, 5, 6, right? See, higher and higher and higher, which is the key ultimately as far as what creates a qualifying signal. 7, 8, 9. Sorry, someone walked in on me there. 9, right there. 10. And then this one ends up looking like it's right as well, but it's actually not qualified because it's based on market structure. So the fact that this is a lower low would make this by itself unqualified. There's ways to zoom in, of course, and then see if you can make a signal out of it. Perfectly understandable, but in of itself, it's not. But you see these, what do we hit? 9, 10, 11 in a row, whatever it might be. How's that possible? How is it possible that this algo is hitting 9, 10 in a row, right? And look at the locations. Always the low, right? You're coming to the absolute low. And I could actually read it on this signal, but I'm making sure that it makes a local high just to kind of help people out. But how does it always happen? Even this one, technically it hits as well, just so you understand, because I'm the one that understands the signal here. But there's something in here where it's only a 3 count back, but technically right there, this would be a signal. But who cares? It wasn't, so let's just leave it alone. The point is how? How are they all happening at the low? How are they all happening at the pivot, right? It's based on this exact concept that I'm speaking about, which is the law of vibration, right? So that's ultimately the idea of how I'm looking at it. And now I'm going to jump further. You don't have to understand that element. I just want to kind of show that so people understand, like, okay, well, wait a second. There's something going on here, right? You didn't just happen to fall into 10 straight. So here's what we do. I'm going to switch off now into the subject matter, which is specifically not these particular indicators in here, but this one that we call full vibration, lagging full vibe, right? Excuse me, leading full vibe. Why? Why are we going to look at leading full vibe? Well, ultimately, I'm going to talk about more edge, and I'm going to combine a couple elements here. The color code that you're seeing here, right, is basically really it's just two colors, which is red and green. Blue is the early signal for green. Which means it's leading into the potential. And you'll see at times where sometimes you'll see a blue and it doesn't get there. But I like to have the blue in there because you can get into a signal a little bit earlier. And then, of course, orange would be the early lead into red, showing that there is a potential of red to show up. But what does it mean? What is green and what is red? Well, in this case, it's just a measurement of momentum again. So we're looking at trending momentum. So you can easily see a bull trend with red involved. And it's just telling you that the momentum itself is taking a break. Now, there's many videos on this, so I don't need to go further into this, but I just want to set this up before I show you what we are, in fact, going to get into, right? So that's that. Now, this next level right here, this is called full vibration. Why full? Well, full vibration has, in my opinion, some pretty impressive powers that we're going to talk about. So let me just go ahead and mark off this 50 level right there, because that's going to be one of the main points of concentration for this particular video. Now, I will do another video, and in the next video, we're going to actually place these levels at the 40 and the 60 level, and we're going to talk about something else that's going to be extremely exciting for most people, but we'll save that for the next video. Right now, I'm going to look at two things here. A combination of where full vibration is, whether it's above or below 50, and whether it's rising or falling, right? Then I'm going to look at the coordinating color with it. And what I'm looking for are rising full vibration above 50, right? So I want this level above 50. You might want to pause this, take a note if you'd like. I want rising full vibration above 50 with a special emphasis, by the way, on ones that pivot above 50, meaning I came back and I pivot and start heading up again. That's a special emphasis. So feel free to take that as a note if you'd like. Or if I'm below 50 and falling, with the special emphasis on what? A pivot, right? Below that level as well. Now, that's going to give us one aspect of it. And then I'm going to see, can I match the color, right? So obviously the bull side of the rising above 50, I'm going to look for a match of the color. But I will talk about some other things. Like, for instance, just rising and falling has its benefits, right? So that's going to be something that the good trader, the active trader, the more advanced trader might see on their own anyway. But I do want to keep this particular video a little bit simpler. There's a lot of other things beyond what I'm going to show you, because I'm going to show you some things and you're going to say, well, wait a second, that's a late signal. And that's fine, because the only thing I'm trying to show you is the edge that you can glean, right, that you can bring from utilizing this type of concept, right? So the concept itself, because ultimately full vibration is a very smooth look at this particular tool. I'm taking something that is highly smooth, and I'm putting myself in a position to allow others to kind of have the concept that I'm looking at, which is essentially, I like to long things that are moving up, I like to short things that are moving down, and I like to find ways to create an edge to know which is which, right? So that's a simplified element of it. One more drink and then we'll jump into that. So before I get started, let me just point out a couple things. I might just point out some random things in between here, but one thing you might see here is like, all right, well, hey, this is red and it's falling, right? But it's happening above 50. See, there is a difference between above 50, below 50, which we express as the bull and bear line. That's hard for some people to get used to. It really is, especially the fact that there's a little bit of a lean for something like a huge bullish asset, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin or something along those lines, because you're not going to get as much on the bear side unless you're in a long-term bear market, because with crypto you tend to be all bullish, all bearish, etc. But that's why this actually has some distinct advantages over that as well. So I'll explain that in a minute. So let's just kind of go through here, and I'll mark some areas off. you'll see that I'm not ever trying to take credit for anything that's not there. So if that happens, trust me, just assume that it didn't work out, and I'm completely okay with that, okay? So here we are. I'm going to mark off these particular levels, and I'm going to kind of run through them. And what you'll see here is what? You see we went above 50 with this particular level, and we are green. So this would be a scenario where I say I'm looking for longs. Now, it might confuse some people because I have something called a directional bias indicator, and you can utilize what's called an active version of that or what's called the last color version of that. Both work very well, and the idea of that is to give you a directional bias. So that in itself you would still use for anyone that's familiar with it, but this is going to give you either a signal in itself, right, or an added reason to trust your directional bias indicator, or it will tell you, hey, zoom in and see if you can find more reasons to head in that direction. Okay. All right. So for now, though, again, we're going to keep it kind of basic so that we can get through some of this, because I know I took you through a long introduction, because my key is for you to have a little bit more of an understanding, whether than me trying to pull a magic trick or hocus pocus or anything along those lines. Okay. So here we go. Cross the 50 level. Okay. We crossed the 50 level. That's good. So what happens? We rise up a little bit, nothing crazy, came back, pulled back to around the same level. If you were still holding it, you're probably 1 ATR below, so that never was in any worry. What I do like is you do see a pivot long signal now appear while I'm over 50 on daily scale full vibration. That's bullish. Okay, so in case you didn't hear the guy whispering, I said that's bullish. Not to mention the fact that this swing failure pattern that existed right there, also very bullish, right? So this is exactly the scenario that I'm talking about here, which I'm going to come over here just like this, where I came back down and pivoted above 50. We like those. We like those a lot, right? So that didn't happen till there, but a couple candles before, you might have felt pretty good. Now, I will tell you something else that happens. When I am in a bull trend and I'm happy about things, I'm going to throw out a couple different pointers here and there. I might throw some market structure stuff out as well, because the more you know about trading in general, of course, the more it's going to help you out. But what I will tell you is that if I am above 50, right, and I feel good about the direction, especially as this thing climbs higher and higher, when I see a pullback, sometimes I'm just looking for a local high. What is a local high? Very simple terms. A local high is where I have a candle, a daily candle, right, that's going to take out the previous day's high, right? So I closed, and I want to close above the previous day's high. You might call it bullish engulfing or anything along those lines. That's fine. I'm going to call it a local low in this particular instance. So if I have a situation like this where I am pulling back, well, hey, sometimes a local high is enough. Excuse me, local low is enough in a bullish scenario. If it was a bearish scenario, it would be a local high. But here we go, just like that. So I'm in or looking for reasons to be in. Maybe I went to a lower time frame, and there you go. I'm moving along very nicely here. Stop would have been 1 ATR below this level, roughly, which is a pretty standard thing. But ultimately, what do you end up seeing? A significant move to the upside, right? But within that significant move to the upside, we've seen that we actually got another signal right there, because we went off the color and then back green right there again. So there's an added signal there. Boom, perfect. So now we come back down. Now what do we see here? Nothing was really cooking with old Bitcoin, but notice the color. Well, why? Why is that occurring? Because you have a scenario in which the vibration is showing us what? That we have bearish momentum. Not bearish price action. Now, if bearish price action is matching, then that would be problematic. If we were seeing lower highs within this, then yeah, that's going to help us to take some more signals as well, right? But instead, for instance, even here, you see, oh, lower high. Now, it doesn't mean that the structure is broken. It's pretty clear here that for anyone that's looking, that you would say, all right, well, you know, I have a structure here, I have a little bit of a failure pattern, etc. And you're still in that rectangle, right? So we understand that. But if I was trying to play it off of this failure pattern, like I failed, I came here and I rejected on a low time frame, I'm very confident that's going to be a very standard price action type of rejection. Even on this time frame, I would normally, for those that know me, I'm coming to the last high before the failure, like so, rejection. So this wasn't the intention of my video, but yeah, the fact that you're having this red lower high, then that's exactly what it'd be. So it just happened that I was speaking about that. But regardless, the bigger scale of things, not a whole lot was going on here. You were still ranging, and it recycled nicely through the momentum, right? It was a long process until when? Until either this, well, first of all, we got to wait till we're back above 50, right? Because if you see these blue, you might say, why aren't you taking these early signals? Well, we were below 50, right? And by the way, whether you take an early one or not, it's completely up to you. But maybe you look at the early one and either take it, or you'll say, hey, let me go to the lower time frame and see if there's a reason on the 4 hour or 6 hour to in fact enter, which we won't get into on this video. But here we go. Once we go green above 50 again, what happens? No surprise, guys. No surprise. Nice level up, right? And then what happens here? Nice recycling down again, right? So we are expecting this. We expect, by the way, lower high. This happens to be a lower high with a potential pivot short signal and red. And yes, we did get a little bit of a drop, but we're in a hell of a bull trend right now, right? So obviously we're thinking bullish. I'm sure directional bias is absolutely green in this circumstances for those that know about that one. But ultimately, I just want to run through now and go through more signals here. This is good. I like this one because you're above 50, right? And you're almost near the top, right? So I would say like, hey, pretty much guaranteed a loss on this one. And that's going to happen. I like when that happens because that's going to happen. But I will also tell you that for those that understand things like market structure, yeah, you failed, right? You had a little bit of a failure here. You're holding. You are trying to create a nice hold here of the top side of this particular previous level. But you did have a lot to overcome. Again, no excuses. That's a loss there, in my opinion, even though it leveled up for a couple of days. You pulled back, so whether it's a break even or loss, that's up to you. But my point is, I don't try to take credit for these things. Now, what happens? Qualified long above 50. That's bullish, right? So remember, we talked about that. If you get that scenario, that's a good thing. That means that we pulled back, right? And yet, on the higher time frame, on the full vibration, we're above the bullish line. That's a good thing. That's a good place to be. Some more consolidation was necessary. Gives us yet another signal right there. By the way, some greens along the way. I could mark every one of these off if I wanted to, as you can see. And then, of course, I do like the fact that we come back down and pivot above 50 again, right? So I like that pivot above 50. That's always good. By the way, it could pivot at 48 and then scoosh up. That's fine. It's cleaner if it does it this way, right? You see that above 50, that's the better read. What I mean by that is that if I came down like this and then eventually reclaimed, no, that's still technically a signal, right? Which is why I highlighted that one. And you'll have losses. That will happen. But the edge is there, and you're going to see that. You're going to understand that we're piggybacking on the trend. We're piggybacking on the momentum. That's the key to this, finding edge. Not to mention the fact that maybe you're not on this time frame. Maybe you're utilizing the signal to say, hey, let me go down to that 4 hour. Let me go down to the time frame that I like because my high time frame is telling me, hey, I have edge to the upside. So let me utilize my abilities to go to that lower time frame and make it happen. What do you see here? I mean, it's just a glorious entry at 10.9. And look what happens. We don't know the result, right? We just know what has happened. That's the idea of true vibrations, to tell you more about what has happened. And that gives us more ability to guess. And it is a guess, guys. We guess what happens next, right? In this case, we're guessing long because of the signal. And it's one hell of a signal. See where we're at with that? So I think everyone kind of gets the idea. So let me just go ahead and just rip through some of these here and just show more so that we show every single one. So there's no BS here. Just like this. Just like this. Because, you know, in real time, you don't know. It looks so clear and obvious when you're looking at this big screen like this, right? But we don't know that in real time. We wouldn't have known it at all. Meaning, what do I mean by that? Meaning, who says that we're about to double? You know, I didn't know I was going to 2x it exactly at that point, right? But ultimately, you're taking your trades because you're taking them based on edge. All right, we get a pullback. What do we get? Qualified long signal above 50, right? Above 50. That's bullish, right? So we know that again. What is this? Qualified long signal above 50. That's bullish, right? Same thing. You get the point. And what ends up happening? You're ripping now. Now, we didn't know, but the trend's our friend. The trend is our friend. We ride it, and we're rolling with it, right? By the way, never a reason to even, from this point on, to even consider an exit, right? Nothing really happened. Maybe here you thought you lost structure a little bit, but I would say no, you definitely held topside. But ultimately, you see what goes on here. And this thing just continues to rip and rip and rip. Even this short little break here, you still get another couple days there where you're like, all right, 39,000. I'm not saying you should basically be jumping in at 39,000 as it just ripped that high on that late of a signal. But the reality is it still went up to 42, right? So you still had more than a 10% gain from that point. Let's call it 8%, whatever it might be. But the point is you still had a significant jump from that point. Well, what happens? Color change. Rest in the momentum, right? We're resting, we're waiting, we're wet. What else would we be doing? As time goes on, we see it looks like more of a complicated pattern. You better draw that trend line in, just draw it out. top to top, no big deal on that. And guess what happens? Oh, we're breaking the trend line in early signal blue. Oh, maybe it continues. Maybe it doesn't, by the way. If it doesn't continue, who cares? We just 4x this thing, right? But maybe it does. And guess what? It does. And it continues, right? And now we're not early. Now we're actually getting a signal of green, right? And now we get another one right there. And now we get another one right there, actually. And now we get another one here, right? Oops, one over, forgive me, just like that. And by the way, what is this again? Green above 50, right there. You're getting low on that one as well. We're just talking about added signals, added ways to use edge. That's the purpose of this, okay? Continuing on, no signal here with what we're talking about, but what do you have? A qualified long again from the main element, true vibration, with what? Full vibration above 50. Again, you're getting that signal again. Now, this one is the one that I told you wasn't qualified anyway, and you did sink below 50. Now, guess what's happening, guys? Huh. This is interesting, right? So just really quick, I don't want to clear everything out, but this is pretty standard price action stuff. We actually just spoke about this on Discord recently. So what are we doing in a circumstance like this? You could do a couple different things. You could either go to the most recent pivot low, or you can go to the recent down candle before the fall, which was right here. I would take the low of that candle to the previous high. So I went high, range, one last low, leveled up before I failed back into the range, right? So this is basic price action stuff. And that will look like this. I'm going to take the low of that candle. And what am I doing? I'm looking to short any failure of this supply zone. And what do you get? Right there. Okay, so some might not understand that. I get it completely. But look what ends up happening here. Now, there hasn't been a qualified short all year. The first one is a failure. It loses, right? So I want you to see this. Why? Because to have a qualified short, you have to have a lower high. So it would have to go pink, green, pink, and that pink has to be a lower high. But if I went pink, they would all be qualified, right? Because you need a green in between otherwise, right? So you go pink, green, pink, right? So because of that, until there's another green, all of these remain qualified. Again, that's another video. Don't worry about it. But the point I'm making is this one's a loss. You were a little bit early, and there's reasons for that because we're not showing the other indicators here, and that's okay. But I do want to show you something very interesting. What ends up happening? You get a signal here. Guess what? Go 1 ATR above your recent high. You never touch it. And then ultimately you get this rejection here. And what? The first color change below 50 happens right there. We're going to keep them green anyway. I guess I'll change it to red. I don't want to go too far with this. Right about there. Okay. Meaning if I keep showing too many examples, I do want to show a couple other assets also. And what happens? You participate in the huge part of the particular drop that ends up occurring. You get another one right there. Now, one thing, oops, didn't mean to do that. There you go. One thing about Bitcoin, right? It's such a bullish asset that you're not going to get all that many on the short side, right? That's just the nature of the beast until you're back into bear mode. What you did do is you participated in the significant drop. And then what you might notice is that you had qualified signal that failed, qualified signal that held, right? 1 ATR above, you held that one. You had this signal that got you the fat part of that particular move. And then qualified signal, again, you picked the absolute top of that particular range here. Again, it's seeing the signal here, but we're utilizing the local high element there just for safety reasons. So that gives it to you right there, and you get to participate in that as well. But guess what? Life's below 50. Life's below 50. We've talked about this. What other signal might we see when life's below 50? Well, we might look at this and say local high, right? If I see a candle that takes out the low of my previous candle, then that can absolutely be a signal. That's up to you guys. I'll let you guys do your own trading. But that's another way to look at it, or at least take it to a lower time frame. Same thing. I'm below 50 here. Same scenario happens again right there. Yes, that could be another short. Again, that would be you doing it. You using the tool, but you're the key to that trade. That's not credit Mr. Anderson. That would be credit to you. But I am showing you that there's extra edge that can be brought that way as well if you have some good understanding of price action. Because on the big trends, in reality, I promise you, my entries are extremely simple. They're looking like this. These are my entries where I'm saying, well, the entry is going to be based on what? Off of a very simple market structure element, something like a swing failure pattern, something like a local low. in an environment that I like, because I've already made the determination that I need to be bullish. So if I determine I need to be bullish, then I'm looking for longs. And my criteria is probably simpler than that. And that's what I classify as edge. Okay. Now back to the long side, because we're going back above 50 here. We'll keep these one red because I don't want to play with this too much longer. I want to switch assets. Here we go. Oops, I keep doing this. Sorry. Let's just go with that. And then we'll go here as well. And we'll look at them after. I'll just mark a bunch of them. And then we'll come back. So again, long, or at least looking for longs, right? So, maybe see this big candle and you go, it's too big. Well, you said, hey, I'm looking for reasons to long, and maybe that lower time frame got you an entry. By the way, maybe it didn't. Again, you've seen enough edge to know that we're not trying to BS you here. This particular range is complicated, and this is qualified, right? This one's probably, if you held on, it ends up being a loss. Of course, it did climb significantly after the signal, but you probably say, all right, let me get out of here on this ugly candle. If you had held, I would say definitely sell part of your position always if they take off on you. But the key there is that you're in a position to understand that these still remain qualified. I had some friends that bought off of these recently as well, just based on the fact that they like to use high time frame hodl positions with these particular entries for good reasons, right? You've seen how it hit 10 pivots in a row on the daily scale. And then ultimately you end up getting 2 cracks at it here. But then what follows you here is you end up saying, all right, we go back to blue. But not above 50 until right there, right? So on that level, which was 48,000, we've climbed to roughly 58,000 at the point of making this particular video. I think that's pretty obvious. You can watch this back about 15 times. I will go ahead and just kind of briefly look at a couple others. I'll try to go through it fairly quickly. We'll see. I say that a lot, and then it doesn't always happen that way. But just kind of let's look at the good old Ethereum here and see what we get. Let's look at the bear side of things. What happens in a situation where the market's been rolling. Now, keep in mind, it's not so easy when the market just goes absolutely crazy to put yourself in a position to say, oh, wow, I'm going to definitely nail the top with this very smooth indicator. No. Remember, there are other indicators. I'm not going to bring it up here, but trust me, we have FSR and things of that nature, which are much more reactive that you can use in conjunction with this that creates the edge even more significantly. It puts you into a much better situation to have an understanding of how these things work, right? So I would say that to keep that aspect in mind here, but I'm just using this very slow aspect to explain the edge part of this, okay? Now, what do we see here, by the way? Keep in mind, you can use anyone that has some real chops in their price action game or anything along those lines. Let's look at this. What do we have here? You're leveling up, failure pattern, boom. Not only is it a swing failure, but a failure, right? Because I lost this pivot here. So pivot to my recent high here would have been, let's say I'll take my wick high before I started showing these particular pivots. Doesn't matter, whatever strategy you like to use, you can. But ultimately, I'm going to look once I lose that level for some rejection. So I get a rejection here. It comes back into the zone. So I test the supply zone and lose it. What do I get? Qualified looking short here, right? So I have a qualified looking short and lower high on my full vibration like this, right? That gives you a lead into this particular drop. You understand? Now, by the way, if I'm into a downtrend, I'm showing you that, by the way, that happened over 50. I'm just trying to, I should have pointed that out before I mentioned it. But basically, let me just put 50 up here so we know. I'm just making it clear it's already there. Plus, you can go into the settings and set it up that way as well, so don't worry. But the idea here is that with that alone, of course, you could have identified, say, oh, price action or rejection here, but you are getting the qualified short from any logical supply zone that anyone would have used. It doesn't matter how you like to do it. Some people might like to do it like this. Some people might like to do it like that. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but ultimately, you certainly had a break of structure, and then you rejected a couple times. It looked like it was trying. That's actually a nasty fake out. Good job of what's happening. We have momentum dropping and then lose it below 50. Now, sometimes they'll skate around this 50 area and take back off to the upside. So we never know that. Don't think like, oh, it went below 50, so now we're in a bear market. Not at all. This is just momentum, right? Keep that aspect in mind. In fact, what we want to look at during this process is market structure, right? You need to think like, hey, I need to break structure to the upside to reverse this particular problem. Until then, I'm certainly keeping an eye on the bear structure as well. We've already talked about this previously, right? The local high scenario. Like, okay, well, here we go. This was my high candle. if I take out this particular level on close, which doesn't happen till here, yeah, I'm short, right? Now I might have had to hang out here, but was never at risk, and you can see the kind of drop that we get. If you don't like that aspect, just use what we've been talking about, which is okay. Orange is right there. That's the orange signal. Below 50, that's our short. It pays off in spades, right? And it pays off and pays off and pays off. Red comes the next candle as well. Thank you very much. Red comes in here as well. Thank you very much. Red comes right there. Thank you very much. We're very happy. Oh, look at this. We're fading back. Okay, let's let it do its thing. We need to, by the way, something very interesting here that I will go ahead and just take a moment to kind of point. I don't want this. Forget it. I'll save it for another video. I'll save this for another video. Don't worry about it. It's ultimately something to where if you have that ability to use some price action techniques, you can do a couple other things. But again, I might as well just use this for another video so that we don't go too long. I know I'm already longer than I expected. So next one, using the exact signal. Remember, I'm waiting until I'm below 50. The point I was going to point out is that, of course, you can utilize this and understanding that, hey, if I'm dropping, I can do a couple things. One, I can look at break of structure on my actual indicator. Again, we'll talk about it on another video, which is right there. To look at the fact that, hey, look at this, I've just created one hell of a bear divergence, right? From here, looking at this level. So if I understand market structure, I say, look at this, I just came from this level here down to this level there, like so, if we're looking at close to close. Meanwhile, look at the effort. I put in significant effort to get to this top, and I fell way short. So what happens in that situation? I'm actually going to mark it off here because why not? It looks like we're at roughly 975. So in a situation like that, you say, well, that was the level that I needed to get to, right? So I needed to take that level out, and I simply did not. Okay, so let's just kind of look at that level because it's going to remain an important support resistance because of this divergence element, okay? Study your divergence, but don't study it in 5 minutes. Study it and understand it like the back of your hand, and understand that it relates to market structure. That's the real key when you're dealing with any type of divergence. Okay, so here we go. Divergence, interesting, failed miserably. Doesn't mean we don't know what's going to happen. It needs to hold up. We'd like to hold top side here and go again. We would like to, if anything, just swing failure over here, go again. All those are what's needed to reverse action here, right? But ultimately, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So what can you do? You put yourself into a position where you say, let's wait for the signal, which is there, and that puts you there. So short right there, huge down break again. Now we've talked about these, the ones that come into the 50 line and reverse. Okay, again, now this one I can tell you might have been a loss because it did pop back up prior to that, but that's okay. We're willing to take the next one. We're always willing to find the edge and use the edge because look, you don't know which is the one that's going to pay you, right? It's not a game of knowing. It's a game of edge, right? So ultimately, more edge right there, more edge right there. We'll come back to that level that I put as a support resistance. Eventually, we'll run into it because I just want to show you something. I haven't done this ahead of time to know or anything along those lines, but you'll get an understanding here. And guess what? Going down, right, under 50, same thing we've talked about. Again, that's information, that's knowledge, that tells you something, but maybe that big candle you didn't want to short. That's up to you, but here you go again. Now you change colors like we've spoken about. Now we went red. You still had a couple candles of down action before it kind of tried to stabilize a little bit. And here we go. We're trying. We did creep our way back up at 50. I actually just spoke about that, hey, that will happen. But then if you see it lose it, this is a problem, right? And it's a problem that pays you off because you said, hey, that's super bearish and I'm playing edge and that got me a good short. Again and again and again. And these, they don't pay off too much, but you do see price continues to drift here. The fact that it ends up reversing, you probably got out, break even, maybe small loss, not the end of the world. But again, you're always just looking for edge. Look at this entry again, right there. Boom, below 50, red. Here you go. It's actually the next one, which is that candle right there. And a nice drop. Again, these are nice drops. These are significant percentages here. That's 119. It eventually made its way down to 99. You would agree, yes, there's plenty of room to make some money in there. And that's the idea. Now, you can see this get back over the 50, and it's playing now. It's hugging the line, so it is trying. So let's just skip the bull candles, skip the bull signals, which we, by the way, see bull, 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 right? Bull. The fact that you can use it as a 50-50 line is actually kind of amazing. There's not too many indicators that you can utilize in that type of manner, but it does allow you to get away with it in this particular case. And I'm going to forward here in time. and see, did we ever make our way back, which of course we did. And what happens here? Why did I put that level there back before, right? Because I told you that that's going to be an important support resistance flip. Now, does that mean that you're going to resist there? No. It just means it's going to be an important support resistance flip. So what happens? Pause right there, make our way over with the test. Next day, test the level and hold. Little bit of a bounce, come back. Guess what? That's now our support. 1, 2, 3 more days. So 5 days that it held as support, and probably never revisit it again in history, which we did not. Okay. This is the type of stuff that you're able to do because we're putting more significance on what true vibration is. Now you got to see with your own eyes, practice some more for yourself to get that. But this is a significant bit of information because full vibration is named full vibration for a reason. It has the most power ultimately within the game of momentum, in my opinion. And that's how we're able to seek a level and say, well, wait a second. Once I set a divergence like that on full vibration, you better believe that this level now matters, right? That's the key element there. So I went from a pivot, swing pivot, to a pivot. That divergence is clear. You probably don't know it until you set that local high about here when you got that sell signal. And then at that point, you damn better believe that I'm setting an alert with a little note that tells me what's going on that I wouldn't have seen till forever. And then ultimately, I know when I reclaim that, that is intel. That's what tells me, oh, great job. Look, this already went way longer than I wanted it to, but I do want to show you like one other thing. Just give you an idea like, hey, dominance. Everyone's always asking, hey, what about dominance? What about dominance? Well, let's just go look at dominance for a second. You say, well, what does this have to do with dominance? Well, we know when dominance is falling, it's alt season, correct? What if I told you that, look, I can be smarter with my approach on dominance, right? So I post about dominance all the time. I posted probably 15 of the top 20 coins on, I think it was January 2nd, that, hey, alt season, and I think every single one of them 10x, right? That's not to toot my own horn. It's just utilizing a tool and working from there. So what happens here? You see this? We cross over. Let's just look. Like, how long did this guy stay in that area until it made its way back up? It doesn't really matter. Let's just call it there. Why? Why does this matter? Let's go into compare. We can compare. Oh, Sol's up there. Let's compare Sol, new price scale. That'll work. So what happens in this green box as we determine that dominance has a problem? And not only does it have a problem, it has a trend problem. Look at old Sol. At the time that we noticed that it had a trend problem, it looks like the price of Sol was roughly, let me bring this up again to see the price, roughly $3.79. And by the time we were exiting, it was $50 to $55.98, right? It wouldn't matter what we put in here. I can say, let's look at ETH during that time. And of course, we can look at ETH versus Bitcoin and things of that nature. And you can look at other things versus Bitcoin, which would actually be one hell of an idea as well, right? Because it's going to put you into a position to understand, like, hey, if I can understand the trend versus Bitcoin on a daily scale or maybe even a weekly scale, that's going to give me a little more insight, a little more edge in the directional bias that I want to choose, in the type of plays that I want to pick. And that's what this is all about. So what happens with ETH? Same thing. We've seen a low within the first couple of days of 1100. I don't care if we use the high, by the way. Use the high, 1376. And then eventually a high within that green box of 4,179. All just using the same full vibration element to say, hey, alt season, right? So that's kind of the idea. And of course, if anyone's wondering, everyone knows that alts have been crushed. Wonder why? Wonder why they've been crushed lately. Any guesses, guys? All right, I'm out for now. This is Mr. Anderson. It's been a pleasure. Listen, if you want, feel free to like for me. If you're interested in True Vibration, by the way, again, I have a no-cost option for people. If someone tells you to pay for this, it's not me. I don't charge anyone, actually. So in that situation, just know that that's not me and doesn't exist. But DM me on Twitter, as I mentioned. And again, if you have an interest in Prime XPT, just go ahead and check out the link for that as well. Hope all is well. Again, work towards edge. Work towards an understanding for yourself, because that's the key. The key is, can you understand it? Can you build a concept that helps you find edge in your directional bias and your trading? That, hey, if you got the direction right, that's the key, right? So if I know the direction, suddenly my life's a little bit easier. And you're not ever going to know, but if you have edge in choosing the direction, which is what this is all about, then my trading can be easier. Okay? So I'm just trying to help people to find that on their own. Hopefully all is well. fun times are coming. Next video on True Vibration will actually reveal some stuff that's going to kind of blow your mind, but this was a good intro to Full Vibration.